What if the thing you saved from the depths was never really trapped but waiting? I crashed into an unmapped ocean alone and broken, but beneath the waves, I found something impossible. A woman frozen in ice, her skin glowing with an otherworldly blue. When I finally freed her, I thought I was saving a life. I was wrong. She wasn't the prisoner, she was the seal. And by awakening her, I'd unleashed something ancient, something vast, something that had been locked away for centuries, and she needed me to take her place. If this story just gave you chills, you have to stick around for the full breakdown. This isn't just sci-fi, it's the exploration of sacrifice, connection, and what it means to be chosen. Hit that like button if you're obsessed with HFY stories that blend mystery and emotion. Subscribe so you never miss these mind-bending narratives, and share this with someone who loves a good cosmic twist. I've never been great with goodbyes. My father used to tell me something I didn't understand until much later. Those who say goodbye too often end up coming back less. So that morning I didn't bother with any of it. I left my coffee half finished on the kitchen table, gave Bruno, my ancient graying dog, one last pat on the head, and slipped out of the house without a sound. No farewell notes, no "I'll miss you" texts, just gone. The helicopter was waiting, its engine already humming like some mechanical beast impatient to take flight. I'd been doing this for years, solo exploration missions for the Geographic Institute. 2 weeks alone, a blank section of ocean that hadn't been properly mapped, and enough silence to drown out everything that had gotten too loud back on land. And believe me, everything had gotten loud. I loaded what I needed: 2 weeks of supplies, full diving gear, the underwater drone with its temperamental camera system, backup batteries, flashlights, and my notebook. People always ask why I still carry a physical notebook. They assume it's romantic, some indie explorer clinging to the past. But the truth is simpler. Technology fails. Batteries die, servers crash, data corrupts. But ink never lies. Ink remembers. The flight started calm enough. Scattered clouds, clean sunlight pushing through. The kind of morning that feels like possibility. For about 3 hours anyway. Then something shifted. I felt it before I saw it. The wind picked up, and the sky seemed to darken all at once, like someone had poured black ink across the entire horizon. The clouds thickened into a wall of gray-brown, and the helicopter's dashboard started screaming at me, beeping, flashing warning lights, the whole 9 yards. I thought it was a false alarm. Equipment glitches happen. But then there was no time to think. No time for contingency plans or careful calculations. Just the sensation of falling. Fast. And the ocean rushing up at me with an impossible speed, like the earth was trying to swallow me whole. I prayed. I don't even know who I was praying to. And then impact. I don't remember much after that. Just fragments. The sound of metal tearing apart like paper. My body slamming against the harness, hard enough that I thought my ribs had cracked. The taste of salt mixed with blood and gasoline. The helicopter spinning. Or maybe I was spinning. Or maybe the world was. Everything was chaos compressed into maybe 5 seconds. When I came to, I was on sand. My face was half stuck to something slimy and ancient smelling. Seaweed with the stench of decay. The helicopter was partially submerged at the waterline. One rotor snapped clean off and lying like a severed limb about 20 meters down the beach. I staggered to my feet, coughing up water and mud, my shoulder screaming with a pain I'd never felt before, and my left leg refusing to cooperate properly. But I was alive. That was the weird part. I'd crashed a helicopter into the ocean during a storm, and somehow I was alive. All around me, nothing. No buildings, no signs of maritime traffic, no smoke in the distance. Just wind-bent palm trees, smooth stones scattered across black sand, and a silence that felt unnatural. Not the peaceful quiet of isolation, something deeper. The kind of quiet that makes you feel like you've stumbled into a place where time forgot to show up. I spent the first 2 days just assessing damage and taking inventory. My left leg had swollen badly, but nothing seemed broken, just badly bruised. My shoulder felt like someone had taken a hammer to it. I rigged a shelter from pieces of the fuselage and slept under a tarp, spending most of my time trying to stabilize my injuries and figure out what supplies I actually had. The diving gear, though, that was intact. completely intact. All of it. The tanks, the suit, the flashlights, the drone. And when I realized that, when I opened up that equipment case and saw everything untouched, I actually smiled. Because broken leg or not, destroyed helicopter or not, I wasn't going to waste this opportunity. The island had a small cove to the north. It looked promising. The water was crystalline, an impossible shade of blue that almost seemed artificial, like someone had filtered all the other colors out just to leave that one pure shade of perfect. It called to me in a way I couldn't explain, and so I decided I was going to dive. I had no idea what I was about to find.
The first dive felt like stepping onto another planet. I'd been diving since I was 16, tropical reefs, deep trenches, underwater caves, but nothing prepared me for this. The moment I descended into that cove, it was like breaking through a membrane into somewhere else entirely. Phosphorescent corals pulsed with colors I'd never seen documented, fish with geometries that shouldn't have existed, shapes that looked almost deliberately designed, like someone had sat down and thought, what if a creature looked like this? Everything was more alive somehow, more present, but also older, ancient in a way that made me feel young and small. I recorded everything. The drone's camera caught strange rock formations that didn't match any natural geological pattern I had studied. They were too symmetrical, too intentional, like someone or something had carved them millennia ago and just left them there, waiting. On the third dive, I found a fissure. It was narrow, dark, and dropped straight down like an open wound in the ocean floor. The kind of place that makes your instincts scream at you to turn back. I shouldn't have gone deeper. Every survival protocol I'd learned said no, but I'd come all this way, and there was something about that fissure that pulled at me. Not curiosity exactly, something more primal. I sent the drone in first. Standard procedure. The drone descended smoothly at first, its lights cutting through the dark water, transmitting images back to my wrist monitor. 20 meters down. 30. The walls of the fissure were smooth, almost polished, covered in symbols that caught the drone's light and seemed to pulse with a faint bioluminescence. I'd never seen anything like it. Then the signal started to degrade. 40 meters. The drone's camera was struggling now, the image pixelating, becoming harder to read. I was about to pull it back when I saw something that made me forget to breathe. A figure, not an animal, not coral, a figure, humanoid, suspended in what looked like an ice cavern, several meters beyond where the drone could safely go. The image was distorted, breaking apart into static, but what I could see was unmistakable. A woman. Her skin had a bluish tint, almost translucent. Her hair floated around her head as if she were breathing, as if the water itself was holding her up. She wore something like a dress, though dress doesn't quite capture it. Something woven from seaweed and marine filaments, organic and living, or at least it had been once. She was frozen, encased in what looked like a bubble of crystalline ice, suspended in the darkness like a specimen in a museum display case. Ice surfaced so fast, I nearly disoriented myself. My heart was pounding like a broken drum against my ribs. I collapsed on the sand, gasping, trying to convince myself that what I had just seen was real and not some oxygen deprivation hallucination. My hands were shaking. My mind was spinning through 100 different explanations, and none of them made sense. That night, I didn't sleep. The image wouldn't leave my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, suspended in that ice, her hair floating, her face calm and peaceful like she was simply resting. But there was something else too, something in her posture, in the faint expression on her face. She didn't look dead. No, she looked like she was waiting. I spent the next 2 days obsessed, not with scientific curiosity, that was long gone, but with something deeper and more primal, something my body understood before my mind could catch up. I rewatched the drone footage over and over, each time hoping the image would be clearer, each time seeing something new. Her closed eyes, her lips barely parted, the way her fingers were slightly curved, as if she might wake at any moment. I couldn't leave her down there. That thought became a certainty, a gravitational pull I couldn't resist. But the fissure was treacherous. It was deep, narrow, and I could already tell that the currents at its base would be dangerous. My first attempt at diving deeper nearly ended badly. I lost my main flashlight to a jagged rock formation and came back bleeding from my knuckles, frustrated and aching. The island seemed to sense my agitation. That night, the wind howled through the trees like a warning. The sea rose higher than usual, as if it was testing the shore. But I'd already made my decision. I wasn't going to leave, not without trying everything. I built a plan. Not the smartest plan, not even close, but it was something. I gathered parts from the helicopter wreckage and rigged together a floating platform, extra oxygen tanks, ropes to mark the descent, a thermal cutter I'd found in the emergency kit, a small extractor, everything I could think of. I felt like a man from another era, performing some ancient rescue ritual for a submerged goddess. On the fourth day, I was ready. Heart pounding, lungs full of oxygen, I descended into the fissure toward her. I descended into the fissure with a thermal cutter in one hand and my heart somewhere in my throat. The darkness pressed down on me like a physical weight. My flashlight cut through it, but the shadows seemed to swallow the light rather than scatter. The walls of the fissure were smooth and cold, covered in those same symbols I'd seen before. They seemed to glow faintly as I passed, responding to my presence somehow. When I reached the cavity, I saw her again. She was there, exactly as the drone had shown me, suspended in a translucent bubble of ice like a capsule. The ice itself seemed almost alive, pulsing with a faint luminescence. It was as if the entire ocean had created a shield around her, preserving her, protecting her from time itself. I approached slowly. Every bubble of air I exhaled felt like a prayer, a plea, a question. Let me do this. Let me be strong enough. I turned on the thermal cutter and brought it close to the ice. Nothing happened. I moved it closer, watching for even a hint of melting or compromise. Still nothing. The ice didn't react to direct heat. It didn't respond to the compressed oxygen stream. It was denser than any natural formation I'd ever encountered, denser than permafrost, denser than glacier ice. It was like trying to cut diamond with a plastic knife. I tried an emergency cutting tool, striking the ice with all the force I could muster while maintaining control. The impact sent dull vibrations rattling up my arm all the way to my elbow. My hands went numb. The ice didn't crack, didn't even show a scratch. I surfaced with a mix of fury and fear churning in my chest. That night, a violent storm broke across the island. I huddled beneath the helicopter fuselage, watching lightning strike the ocean like the sky was trying to split itself open. The wind howled through the palm trees, and somewhere in the sound of it, I heard a warning. What if she was meant to stay down there? What if freeing her meant breaking some ancient law I couldn't understand? What if I was supposed to walk away? But I couldn't. I wouldn't. That night, I had a dream. She was looking at me, eyes open. No words. No communication in any language I knew. Just her presence, an echo, a voice that existed only in my mind. And somehow, impossibly, I knew she could feel me reaching for her. Even trapped in that frozen prison, she knew I was trying. When I woke up at dawn, I knew what I had to do. I returned to the fissure with a stupid but simple idea. If I couldn't cut the ice, maybe I could melt it slowly, gradually, patient heat instead of force. I rigged the helicopter's floodlights to portable batteries, set up mirrors and filters and high-intensity flashlights, all of them positioned and angled to focus straight down into the fissure like a beacon. It took hours to install the system. I held my breath over and over, fought against my body, against a vertigo, against every instinct telling me this was dangerous and futile. But I kept working. I kept focusing that light, that heat, down into the darkness. Then I waited. One day, then another. Every hour I dove down to check, my eyes desperately searching the ice for any sign of change, for anything that would tell me it was working. And on the third day, something had changed. The ice was dripping. Thin trails of water were bleeding into the current, dissipating into the sea. And along one edge of the capsule, a line had formed, a crack, a fissure within the fissure. Progress. I returned later with the drone's last energy reserve. I used it to apply direct heat to the center of the ice bubble, while I manually removed the outer layers with my bare hands. The cold burned. My fingers cramped. Blood mixed with the seawater, turning the water around me pink. But I kept working. And then I felt it. Movement. So subtle I thought I'd imagined it. A finger, her index finger on her right hand. It twitched, just barely, just enough to know it was real. I screamed underwater. I don't care how irrational that was. I screamed, and the sound of it echoed to the fissure, like a song. I worked faster, freed her legs, her chest, her face. My hands were numb and bleeding, but nothing mattered except getting her out. And then her eyes opened. I don't know how I managed to get her to the surface. She was weak, barely floating, limp in the water like a puppet with cut strings. I wrapped her in a thermal bag and strapped her to me, fighting against the current and the dead weight, my legs screaming with pain, but my arms never stopping. When we broke the surface, the sky had turned ash gray. Rain was falling again. The sea was restless, churning, as if something deep below was stirring. Something that knew what I'd just done. I dragged her to shore. She was gasping, her skin freezing cold, but she wasn't breathing the way I did. It was different, slower, more like she was absorbing moisture from the air itself. Her body was different too, not strange, just other, designed by a completely different biology. She coughed, a soft, fragile sound. Her eyes opened again, and then she spoke, not with words, not with sound, but inside my mind a thought appeared, crystal clear and without language. You shouldn't have done this. The first moments with her were uncertain. She didn't shiver. She didn't breathe the way I did, but she moved. Her movements were deliberate, conscious. Far from hurt, she looked disoriented. Her skin began to change the moment sunlight touched it. That translucent blue started becoming more opaque, as if a thin layer of human skin was trying to cover what she truly was underneath, like she was adapting, transforming. She didn't get up that first day. She lay still in the sand with her eyes open, watching me as I moved around her, setting up a shelter among the rocks. Sometimes her gaze would follow me with an intensity that wasn't frightened. It was more like she was sizing me up, reading me, figuring out what I was. I didn't try to speak. I didn't know what to say. Words felt inadequate. Instead, I focused on building her a decent shelter. Shade from the sun, warmth, fresh water collected in leaves. She accepted everything without gestures or words, but I knew she understood. When I got close, her eyes tracked me, not with fear, but with recognition, like she already knew me from somewhere. 2 days passed like that. Every night, I slept nearby in case her condition worsened, but it was the opposite. I was the one getting worse. Something about her presence drained me, not in a painful way, but like she was drawing something from me, sharing part of her invisible burden. It was as if by saving her, I'd taken on a weight that wasn't mine to carry. My energy was fading. My mind felt foggy. I'd fall asleep and wake up more exhausted than when I closed my eyes. And then the memories began. They weren't dreams, not entirely. Sometimes I'd lie awake staring at the stars, and suddenly images would appear in my mind. Not like my own memories. Those feel personal, intimate. These felt like foreign fragments inserted without permission, like I was watching someone else's life play out inside my head. I saw an ocean, but not Earth's ocean. Deeper, more luminous, filled with stone columns covered in symbols that pulse with bioluminescent light. Massive sea creatures floating in silence. Things that made whales look like minnows. And her. I saw her from the outside, younger, wilder, surrounded by others like her. They were dancing to the water, moving with purpose and grace, protecting something, always protecting something. Then it always ended the same way. Darkness, a kind of black mist spreading through the water like ink, the columns falling, the light dying, the ice forming, the confinement. I began to understand, not with certainty, but with deep intuition. She wasn't from this time, maybe not even from this planet. She was a relic of a world that existed before ours, hidden beneath layers of salt, time, and forgetting. She had been sealed, locked away, not by enemies, but by choice. a renunciation, a sacrifice. Each time she shared those fragments with me, she seemed stronger. Her movements became more fluid. She began to walk, though slowly, her feet semi-transparent, barely touching the ground. The dress, that organic weaving of seaweed and marine filaments, seemed to regenerate as if drawing from the environment to rebuild itself. Moss, scales, droplets of water suspended in the air like jewelry. I didn't understand why she let me see her memories, why she had chosen me to awaken her from that frozen prison. But I accepted it. I had nothing else left. The island was changing too. The trees bent in her direction, as if bowing to her presence. The birds had stopped singing, all of them, completely silent. The sea rose a little more each day, as if it wanted to touch her again. And beneath the ground, something moved. It didn't make a sound. I could feel like a slow, deep pulse, a heart buried so far down that it might have been the island's own heartbeat. While exploring an area west of the beach, I found half-buried structures, smooth stones too symmetrical to be natural, too perfectly arranged. Beneath them, a partially broken dome made of the same material as the symbols I'd seen underwater. Inside, a flooded chamber covered in murals. I couldn't read the symbols. The language was nothing I'd ever encountered. But some of them matched the ones from my visions. One central figure appeared over and over, a woman with long hair, her arms outstretched over a circle filled with water. Around her, a kind of people or species kneeling. And her face was the same as hers. That's when I knew. She was a guardian, perhaps the last one. She had been sealed not as a prisoner, but as a protector. Her body, her very existence had been used as a lock. Something dangerous, something vast, something dark had been locked away inside her centuries ago, maybe millennia. And by breaking the ice, I had set it free, but not completely. She still contained it partially. Her form was changing with each day spent out at sea. With every cell that mutated, she had less strength to hold back what slept inside her. And I didn't know it yet, but the moment I'd touched her in that fissure, when I'd pulled her from the ice, a transfer had begun. Part of that burden had passed to me. It wasn't love. It was something else entirely. Something ancient and inexorable. A choice. It was strange how you could feel someone's presence without a single word being spoken. She moved along the shore like she belonged to the wind itself, soft, deliberate, purposeful. Her feet barely touched the earth. Sometimes, when I thought she wasn't looking, I'd lift my eyes and find hers fixed on me. Not predatory, not invasive, just reading, understanding, seeing through me without violence. Every time I touched her, by accident when offering food or tending to a wound, a jolt would run through my body. It wasn't electricity exactly. It was something deeper, something more fundamental. As if in that subtle friction, our memories blended for a fraction of a second. I'd see flashes of her world. She'd feel echoes of my loneliness. One night, I found her near the water, standing completely still, staring at the horizon. The moon fell on her like a shattered mirror. The skin on her back seemed to glow from within, as if something was beating inside her. Something vast and ancient and powerful, pressing against the walls of her body like a prisoner testing the bars of its cage. I approached without a sound. She didn't move away when I was close. She turned very slowly, no alarm, no surprise, as if she had been waiting for that exact moment. And then she did something that changed everything. She didn't touch me with her hands. Instead, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against mine, just barely grazing. A gesture so simple and yet so profound that I felt my entire body go still. In that instant, I saw myself from the outside. My childhood, every moment of it. The laughter, the pain, the small joys that felt like treasures. My mistakes, the people I'd failed, the bridges I'd burned, my loneliness. All those years of pushing people away, telling myself it was easier to be alone. All of it, everything I had been, everything I carried, it was all there, visible, undeniable. But there was no judgment, only acceptance. I also saw what I could become. Futures branching out like paths in a forest, some bright, some dark, some impossible to fathom. She showed me all of it without fear or coercion, just laying it bare. This is what you are. This is what you could be. Choose. For a moment, I didn't know where I ended and she began. Our memories braided together. I felt her first moment of consciousness in that frozen prison, the weight of what she was containing, the burden of being the lock that held back the darkness. I felt the sacrifice her people had made, choosing her to be their eternal guardian. I felt the loneliness of centuries, the knowledge that she would never be free. But I also felt her will, her strength, her refusal to break. And she felt my need to matter, my desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, rescuing her meant my life had finally counted for something. It wasn't love in the conventional sense. It was something older and more primal, a recognition, a completion, two incomplete things becoming whole for just a moment. When she pulled away, I felt empty, like something essential had been taken from me. But I understood now. Everything made sense. She hadn't woken up by accident. She hadn't chosen me randomly. She had called me, across time and distance and impossibility. She had reached into my mind and pulled me to that island. She had needed someone broken enough to understand her, someone desperate enough to save her, someone willing to sacrifice everything. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. We simply sat together, watching the sea rise. With each tide, the water came higher. With each hour, the air grew heavier. The birds had long since fled. The trees had stopped moving. Even the wind had fallen silent. At dawn, the sea had receded, but something had changed fundamentally. The air itself felt different, thicker, charged with potential. She walked differently now, more firmly, more aware. Her skin no longer glowed with that ethereal blue. It was becoming opaque, more human. Her body seemed to be mutating. But it wasn't adaptation. It was transformation, preparation. I went to check the dome. The water level inside had dropped significantly, and the symbols on the walls glowed with an intensity I'd never seen before. A carved stone had risen from the floor, one that hadn't been visible before, a kind of altar, and standing before it, I understood the full truth. She wasn't a victim. She had been a seal, a living barrier. Her body, her very existence had been engineered as a container for something dark and vast that had been locked inside her centuries ago, maybe millennia. And by breaking the ice, I hadn't freed her. I had awakened what she was holding back, but not completely. She still contained it partially. Her form was changing because with each day spent out of the sea, her human form was deteriorating. And as it deteriorated, she had less strength to keep the seal intact. The darkness was beginning to leak through the cracks. I didn't know it then, but the transfer had already begun. That moment when our foreheads touched, when our minds crossed, that's when it happened. Part of her burden had passed to me. A portion of the seal now resided in my cells, my consciousness, my very being. She had chosen me as her successor, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. And somewhere deep below the island, in chambers we hadn't discovered, something old and terrible began to stir. On the final night, the island trembled, not with earthquakes, nothing so simple or geological. It was breathing. After centuries of silence, the entire island was breathing again. I felt it in the sand beneath my feet, in the trees, in the very air filling my lungs. The sea began to glow. Shades of green, red, violet, colors that shouldn't exist in nature, emanating from beneath the waves like some massive thing was rising from the depths, rising and waking. The light was beautiful and terrible, and I understood that what I was witnessing was the beginning of the end. She came to me, not in fear, but in absolute calm, as if everything was unfolding exactly as it should, exactly as she had always known it would. Her eyes no longer shone with that otherworldly luminescence. They were human now, deeply, painfully human. And they were sad, humanly sad. I understand, I said, though she hadn't spoken a word. She didn't nod. She didn't need to. We had moved beyond language weeks ago. You have to stay, she said, her voice inside my mind, but also somehow in the air around us. Not to die, but to seal what I can no longer hold back. Your body is young. alive, compatible with what I am, with what I carry. And you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. My time has passed. My form cannot endure another metamorphosis. But yours can. You have the strength I no longer possess. It was always meant to be this way. I called you here for this reason. You were never rescued me. You were always meant to replace me. The word should have terrified me. They should have filled me with desperation and rage. But standing there, watching the ancient sea awaken, I felt only a strange peace, purpose. Finally, after years of running and hiding and pretending not to feel anything, I had been chosen for something that mattered. She placed her hand on my chest. The heat was intense, not burning, transcendent. It was like every star in the universe was being pressed against my heart. I felt my body begin to change, cells restructuring, consciousness expanding, the boundaries of my skin becoming thinner, more permeable. I could feel what she had been carrying, the weight, the responsibility, the immense and terrible burden of being the lock that held back the darkness. She was passing it to me, all of it. It will hurt, she whispered. Not physically, but you will know things now. You will feel things that humans were never meant to feel. You will be aware of it always, the weight beneath the surface, the thing you are containing. But you will also be strong enough to bear it. Will it hurt you? I asked. For the first time, she smiled. A genuine smile, sad and ancient and beautiful beyond comprehension. No, for the first time in millennia, it will not hurt. The light from the sea intensified. The island groaned. The dome we had discovered rose slightly from the earth, rearranging itself into a perfect circle, revealing passages that had been sealed for ages. I could see them, shadows of things moving down there, vast things, waiting, but they were patient. They had been sealed long enough to know how to wait. As her hand remained on my chest, I felt myself becoming something other. The edges of me were dissolving. My memories were becoming sharper, clearer, more vivid. I could see through the layers of time now. I could feel the pulse of the island, the breath of the sea, the slow, ancient heartbeat of the thing beneath everything. And then I felt her fade. It wasn't death. It was release. Her body became translucent, then transparent, then something between light and memory. She was dissolving back into the ocean, back into the water that had always been her true home. She was becoming part of the sea again, part of the current, part of the tide, part of the eternal cycle. Thank you, she said, her voice already distant, already becoming the whisper of waves. Wait, I called out, but she was already gone. The light faded. The ocean calmed. The island fell silent once more. But I was changed. Completely. Irrevocably. When I woke up, I was alone on the shore. The island was different, silent, but at peace. The trembling had stopped. The dome had settled back into the earth. The sea had returned to its natural color. I walked to the water's edge and looked at my reflection on the surface. It wasn't me looking back. My skin was different, subtly translucent in certain lights. My eyes were deeper somehow, as if they existed in layers. Something pulsed beneath my sternum, not my heartbeat. Something older, something vast. She was gone, truly gone, but her legacy lived in me. I am the seal now, and I will keep the darkness contained for as long as I breathe, not out of obligation, but out of love, for her, for the world she chose to protect, for the countless beings that exist in the light, because she was willing to sacrifice everything. I don't know how long I will last. I don't know what happens when this form finally breaks down, but I know that when it does, there will be another. There must be another, because some things are too important to let die. Some seals are worth keeping.